What's up, guys? What is up? You have reached Real Life and Law, guys. If you don't know, my name is Eugene, and I am an attorney. Let me straighten my jacket up here a little bit. I am flying solo today. My daughter is out picking up the little rugrats from school. So today's topic, guys, without getting political, this is not a partisan show. I am not a partisan hack, a partisan commentator, although I do have some pretty, I think, middle of the road beliefs about certain things. Today, we're going to talk about the freedom of religion, which is enshrined in the First Amendment. We've talked a lot about the First Amendment, and everybody always refers to it as the freedom of speech. It's true. But we also have the integral part of that is the freedom of religion. Our founding fathers thought that the freedom of religion was so fundamental and basic to a society that it's in the very first part of the First Amendment. So it's known as the Establishment Clause, if you take a look at it. The government shall not establish any religion, and they shall not prohibit you from the exercise of your religion, no matter what it is. And it goes on to a lot of other things. The First Amendment goes on to, freedom to assemble, freedom to petition the government. Um, so let's talk about that, particularly in light of Mr. Charlie Kirk. Hopefully, you know who he is. Unless you're living under a rock, you will know that he's the gentleman that was murdered by a young fella, a 21-year-old. I won't say his name, but a 21-year-old, because I believe he believed, I think there's good reason to believe that he believed that Mr. Kirk didn't have the right to speak his mind on a lot of topics. Mr. Kirk spoke a lot about three topics that get you in a lot of trouble by other people: religion, politics, and freedom. So he also had strong beliefs on marriage and education and things like that, which we can get into. So, guys, this is a call in show. You can see the number right on the bottom, 559-335-3331. You are welcome to comment. I am using a program that reads the comments to me. So hopefully you're catching me on TikTok, you're catching me on Facebook, and you're catching me on YouTube. So feel free to send a comment in the chat. But if you've got something to say about what has happened, particularly last week, and I chose this subject for a couple of reasons. It makes me a little bit oogie, and I'm just going to be honest with you and straight up, as I always am on my platforms. It makes me a little bit oogie when I see the government involved in religious matters. It just does. It makes me a little bit, I think it's a little creepy. Um, I Politicians that wear their religion on their sleeve always makes me a little nervous, because I just don't think that in many cases it's appropriate to go across the country and thump a Bible, because I just think we get into a weird space whenever we have our political figures. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't be able to hold those beliefs, because I have my beliefs. They have their beliefs. But I think sometimes when we see them make public pronouncements, it could it could look as though they are establishing a religion or a religious thought. I just think that's the appearance to me. It's what it could look like. So what do you think about it, guys? What do you think? Come on, guys. 559-335-3331. Let me know that you're listening to me and you're hearing me, guys. I'm reminded, so we'll talk a little bit about this. I'm reminded eh, there's a few subjects that I think are sacrosanct to an individual: their politics, what church they go to, and the way that they choose to worship. Those are two things that I think uh, are better left in the confines of that individual's brain and heart. I think the moment you start talking about those things out in public, then you alienate a whole lot of people. Because let's face it, most of the people that you meet in your life are not equipped. They're not equipped emotionally to handle any different viewpoints. When you start talking about your viewpoint, you start talking about your religion, you start talking about your politics, you're going to piss off a whole lot of people. Some of them could be your good friends because they just don't have the intellectual capability to debate or discuss. And we won't even call it a debate, we call it a discussion. They just people don't, especially in this day and age, they're just not used to hearing viewpoints that contradict theirs because, and there's a big reason for that. Anytime someone hears something that is contradicting their viewpoint, they begin to question, they begin to question their own views. They begin to question all those things that they were raised with and all those icons and stuff that they hold dear. And whenever they're challenged, it can be a little bit bothersome to people whenever they hear something different that is inconsistent with their beliefs or the way they were raised. And that's a big deal. You have to really step lightly whenever you engage someone with those topics. And Mr. Kirk didn't care. He was a free speech advocate, which I am also. The freer the speech, the freer we are. And I believe that. 559-335-3331. Guys, if you're hearing me on my YouTube station, my YouTube channel, or my TikTok, well, God damn it, give me a holler. Let me know that we're up and running because right now I'm hearing crickets and I'm beginning to wonder if we are up and running. I hope we are. So, guys, tap, share, and follow. If you're looking at me on TikTok, you can call me. Oh, I do see some people in the chat over here. Guys, 559-335-3331. This show only works when you all participate. So, um, so specifically about the what I found, and I'm thank you, Margaret, listening while working. Thank you. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, what what I found a little bit disturbing about the issues from this past week is it has seemed that with all of these with with all of the political leaders that we had uh with all of the political leaders that we had showing up at Mr. Kirk's funeral, um it could appear that our government was establishing a religion. And I think that's I don't want to say creepy because creepy is the wrong word, but it does give someone who isn't really informed cause to step back. Whenever you see the president and the vice president and all of our heads of our government in one place, um, uh, promoting their flavor of religion, it can and maybe should make you a little bit nervous. Um, I'm not sure if it's right or wrong, but I just think there's cause to pause. It looks as though our government is endorsing or trying to establish a certain flavor of religion, and that makes me a little bit nervous. Several years ago, um, here in the mountains, we're used to religious things going on all the time, particularly in the schools. I can remember as a young boy when I was in grade school, they had these traveling ministers that used to go about, and they would go up and down the hollers and the schools of Eastern Kentucky, particularly, and probably in Tennessee and a lot of places. And I'm not ever sure. I was a young kid, second, third grade. I don't know what denomination they were, or what flavor of religion that they belonged to. But what I do know is these people traveled across our state for sure, and probably other rural places to read the Bible. They told Bible stories to a bunch of young kids who some probably never heard the Bible before. Now, my grandfather was a Free Will Baptist preacher. He was a preacher for sure. And I sat in a many a pews and listened to the word and listened to him preach and other people preach. But these people that would come to the schools were a little different. They just taught Bible stories. As a third grader, I couldn't really tell what denomination they were, although they were Christian. They taught from the Bible, all these little stories. They brought they brought a little felt board and some little animals and people, and they would stick them on the board, and they would tell their little Bible stories, and they would move on. They come into school about about once a month. They would come into the schools and go around to all the classes and put on their stories. And as a little kid, that was okay because that was consistent with what I knew, according to my grandfather and my mother, who tried to raise us in a Christian environment. So that didn't bother me, but I didn't think enough about it. I was in the third grade. So let's advance the argument. Back a few years ago, they had some ministry come into our county, and I'm in Eastern Kentucky. I'm in Pike County. They had some ministry come in, and they set up in the gymnasium, and they allowed these kids to attend this ministry during school, and which altogether probably wasn't a big deal to me. But what I found was bothersome was that they made an altar call. If you're an old hillbilly, and they did this at the Charlie Kirk funeral. It was a version. In fact, I heard one commentator just recently say that it was an altar call. So during this little event at one of our local high schools, they made what they call an altar call. And if you're an old hillbilly, if you're from the South, you know what an altar call is. The preacher asks you to bow your head, and without raising your head, he's asking you how many of you all are a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. And you raise your hand. And then he'll also go one step further, or she. Usually it's a man, because most Baptists don't believe in a woman preacher. Uh, I'm not saying I do, but I'm saying most Baptists don't believe in that. So the preacher will go on to say, do you feel like you've been touched today? And then they'll go on and on and on. Some preachers will browbeat the hell out of you, talk to you about when you leave this church, if you feel like you want to belong and get acquainted with Christ, raise your hand. And then they'll get a few people to raise their hands if you're in that altar call. It can be kind of rough, because those dudes, those old-fashioned preachers, know how to sell. They're good at it. Now, when I say that, I'm not being disingenuous. I'm just saying they know how to sell. So you're sitting there in the pew, your head's still bowed, but I'll tell you what, as a young boy, I will admit right here, right now, that I'd raise my head up and I'd peek around, see whose hand was raised, who was feeling a little guilty, who was one of those people that was close to going up to that altar, because that preacher, once you raised your hand and admitted to the whole. Well, of course, everybody's supposed to be bowing their heads, but people like me, I'm a little boy. I'm looking around, see whose hand is raised. See whose hand is raised, because they're not, they don't have a personal relationship with Jesus. That's the way they say it. And he'll ask people to raise their hands. And so when you raise your hands, then he puts the bite on you. That preacher, boy, they're good at it. When they see you raise your hand, then he's going to put the bite on you. Now, if you're raising your hand, something made you raise that hand. You feel that tug at your heartstrings, and you know that if you don't commit today, when you leave this church house, you might not get another chance. That's true. If you're a Judeo Christian, you probably believe that you don't never know when a time's coming. And so grab it now while you're feeling it, while you're feeling the spirit at you, get on. And so then that preacher's going to ask you one more thing. He's going to ask you to come to the altar. If you feel so strongly and you don't want to leave that church house without you sealing the deal with the big guy, get on up to the altar. And there's many a times I sit in those pews and I have waited and waited, um, and and kind of sweating bullets, thinking, "Man, I don't want to go up there. I'm not ready to do this." And so it would pass, and I would go leave the church and go on. But now, during the Charlie Kirk funeral, one of these preachers actually gave an altar call. Although he didn't ask people to do the full Monty, he didn't ask people to go to storm the stage and commit to having a relationship with Christ. He just asked people to raise their hand if they did not have a relationship. And I just don't know about that. I think at a funeral service, it's okay. But then you had all of our politicians, all of our leaders going up and professing their faith in Jesus Christ, which, I don't know about that. I don't know about that in the setting of that particular situation. Well, anyway, I'm going to jump back to the high school situation. They allowed this to happen. So they had this service in the high school, and they gave an altar call to a bunch of young kids. And they were wanting these kids to commit to something that many of them had absolutely no daggone idea what they were doing. To me, religion is a very personal thing. And to commit to a religion, commit to a flavor of religion, it's one of those things that should be taken seriously and not done on a knee jerk. So guys, 559-335-3331. If you want to holler at me, give me a call. Let's talk about your thoughts on it. And what you think about what happened at the funeral. Again, I'm not hating on the funeral. I'm not trying to throw shade on the funeral. They have every right to have that funeral. Damn, it was a big one. But the problem I had was with the establishment clause of our Constitution, because it certainly could look like that the government was, if they weren't trying to establish, they were certainly endorsing a particular brand or flavor of religion. And I think that could be just a little bit scary. Guys, just shoot me a comment here on TikTok. Guys, on YouTube, go on over to my YouTube channel. Let's talk a little bit. I want to hear your thoughts about this topic. You can call me, please. The number's on the bottom, 559-335-3331. This show doesn't work if you don't call. So, and I raised a little bit of fuss about those fellas that came out to that school, because they went around to a lot of schools and they let the kids out, and the gymnasium was packed. And there were people who went when the altar call was given. There was young kids that went up there and proclaimed their faith. Some of these kids were even already a member of a religion. Imagine the shock of their parents when they go home and they tell their mom and dad that they got saved today. And that's the way the Southerners put it. You've been saved? That term always uh, causes me to smile. Saved from what? Well, if you're a preacher, saved from the devil. But these little kids going home after this service, going home telling their mamas and daddies that they've been saved. And parents are saying, but you're already a member of a church. I see these kids were pressured. They were pressured. And it could look like, since that religious ceremony was at the school, it could look like the government was endorsing a brand of religion. And I'm just not sure that's a place we want to be at. Um, you know, freedom of religion in the public square. I love freedom of religion. But I will tell you, I want our government to get out of the religion business. They're supposed to be out of it. Now, having a religious ceremony does not violate, as far as I know, the Establishment Clause. It doesn't look like that President Trump, Vance, and all the other people, Vice President Vance, and all the other people associated were trying to establish a religion. They weren't trying to prohibit, which is the second part of that, the First Amendment. The second part is no establishment and no prohibition. You cannot restrict someone's freedom to practice their flavor of religion. So, but I just think, as a matter, if I'm thinking through all of this, looking back from the time those traveling ministers come out to my school in Tomahawk, Kentucky. I was in fifth or sixth grade. I was in Tomahawk, Kentucky. If you ain't never been there, you need to go. Uh, Sitting there in a classroom and watching them Bible stories. And so I reflect up having a little bit of education and knowing the way government's supposed to work and our Constitution, which I absolutely believe in, that the episode in that school, in that high school that I just talked about, and now we fast forward with Charlie Kirk's funeral, the episode at the funeral, I just think our leaders need to be a little careful and cautious so as not to appear to be establishing a religion. And that's all that I'll say on that. So, guys, someone has to give me a call, 559. I'm looking in over here on my TikTok, and we got a bunch of comments. 559-335-3331. If you believe strongly in one way or the other, I'd like to hear your viewpoint about what I've just said. When I'm not talking about Charlie Kirk, I'm not talking about him. He had views on his religion. He was a very strict Judeo-Christian. I would almost say he was an evangelical Christian. His wife is Catholic. And just like me and my wife, I was raised a Baptist, evangelical Baptist. And I married my wife, and I converted to Catholicism for a lot of different reasons, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But it just did make me feel a little bit uncomfortable. I love the baby Jesus. I love the baby Jesus. I do. And I want to go to heaven. I believe there's a heaven. I believe there's a hell. Um, so, um, but I'm not quite sure that venue with all of our leaders and heads of state. I think there's room to make a lot of people who hate Mr. Trump and who hate everything that Donald Trump touches. I think this funeral gave them a lot of room to complain. Let's just say it that way. I think there was more than enough room to have them complain. Guys, 559-335-3331. So let's talk, let's talk, let's talk. Someone give me a shout out if you're hearing me on YouTube, if you're hearing me on Facebook. And let's see what we're going. Guys, what do you think about that? Give me a holler. Let's talk. Let me look in over here and see what my friends in TikTok got to say. Oh, some of you in my TikTok, no, my earpiece is not working. That's why I'm asking you. My earpiece is going to my YouTube. I'm asking you out there if you're looking If you're looking at me on TikTok, going over to my YouTube channel. If you want me to hear your comments, going over to my YouTube channel, click on find my live stream, and then that way you can comment. I will monitor some of these right now and look and see what we've got to give me just a little bit of material, fellas. Too many types of religion. You know what? That's a good comment. Someone says there's too many types of religion. I don't believe that. I believe, just like I believe in the freedom of speech, the more, the merrier. I think, and I think God, and I'm not a biblical scholar by no means, I think he likes it that way. I think he wants us to have a whole lot of pathways to get to where he is. That's my thought on it. I think if you believe in God and you believe that Jesus Christ walked this earth to save your sins, and every religion has some version of that story. Every religion that I'm familiar with in the Western world and even in the Middle East, they have a version of that story that somebody came down to this earth in order to save our sorry asses. So I like the more the merrier. I'm not an exclusive person. I just don't believe, but that's a whole nother reason why I think religion don't need to be in our schools. It just don't need to be there. I know our founding fathers and all of that and the 10 commandments. There's a lot of these schools and a lot of politicians like to make a lot of points and hang the daggone 10 commandments in the school. And they'll make these big pronouncements and they'll have these big press conferences and they'll claim that they did the right thing by putting those 10 commandments up over the school. I just don't think that's the right place to put it. Let mommy and daddy tell little Junior and Sally about the 10 commandments. I don't want the schools, because when those things are in the schools and you have these religious ceremonies in the schools, then it could look like the government is at at minimum they're endorsing a particular religion. We don't want that. And if you do, just let me throw something at you. If you like that, let me throw something at you. Because it just takes a few people in any area in the country to control the political discussion. In Michigan, in Dearborn, Michigan, they're having that battle right now. In some of these little areas, there's pockets of different types of religious communities, and they control the school boards, and they can and are trying to push their religious agenda. I ain't in favor of that. It ain't because the religion they're in. It's because I don't think the damn government ought to be endorsing any religion, because this is what you get. When I made a big fuss when this religious group came to our schools here in Pike County, Kentucky, and spreaded the word and did the altar call. My sister got really mad at me. She got pissed. She said, "We need religion in school." I said, "Yeah, baby." I said, "We do." I said, "But what happens when a bunch of people that control the discussion on that particular subject, what happens if they get elected and they start promoting a flavor that you don't like?" Let's think about that for a minute. What happens when someone controls the levers, the power levers, and starts talking about a flavor of religion that you don't like? What then? What are you doing then? Oh, at that point, you're just going to say, "Nah, hold the phone there, Flossie. Hold the phone. I didn't sign up for that." But you did. If you are okay with the government, a school board endorsing your flavor of religion, then don't be surprised when the regime changes and someone wants to install their flavor. Don't be surprised. And then you get all butt hurt, when that happens. So I don't think there's too many religion. Um, oh, someone's arguing already. Come on, if you're going to argue with me, why don't you give me a call? There's only one path. I don't know about that. Some religions believe, oh, so pathways, let's talk about this. Some religions believe that women ought not cut their hair. Some religions believe that women ought to just wear skirts, not sip any alcohol. And if you do that, you're going to go to hell. I ain't believing that. I don't care. God cares what kind of dress you wear. I don't think God cares how long your hair is if you're a lady. I honestly don't think if you curse every now and then that that's a bad thing, but it's just my thought. Again, I'm no biblical scholar, but I don't believe God is so narrow minded so as to try to exclude a bunch of people because they wear their dress too long or they wear the hair too long or they might let slip a curse word every now and then or maybe even drink a little bit of alcohol. I just don't believe that. So, I mean, that seems to me a little bit narrow minded. And I just don't believe God is a narrow minded person. And then here we go. Most, most priests or pastors are hypocrites. That's a real comment. Oh, come on. I ain't calling anybody a hypocrite. No. And God, according to the scriptures, if you're paying attention there, whoever said that, um, is his forgiveness is never ending. So you might be a hypocrite today and ask for forgiveness tomorrow. And if you believe, if you're a believer, then it goes away. Whatever you did goes away. You're forgiven. So let's not be judged, lest ye be judged. Let's stop that. I don't judge nobody. Try not to. Judging's a shitty thing to do. All right, guys. Do I think Charlie's in heaven? Yeah. I think that's a real theological discussion. You know, I believe Charlie believed in the Lord Jesus Christ was his savior. I do believe he believed that. I think if you believe there is a heaven, I believe Charlie Kirk's there. He lived, by all accounts, he lived his life according to his beliefs in the scripture. And by all accounts, he believed. Now, he had a little different opinions on family and the roles of women and men in a relationship. I think his beliefs were a little bit to the extreme of mine. Although I do believe men and women have decidedly different skills. Inherently, I believe that men and women have different skills. I believe we're born with different skills. If you're a dude, I think you have different skill sets than if you're a lady. So he believed in a really, really, by all accounts, a traditional household where the man was the provider and the primary decision maker and the lady was the nurturer and the organizer and kept a stable household. That's not altogether a bad thing. Charlie Kirk wanted this country to be in such a way that a mother could stay home and raise the kids, which isn't a bad idea. When I was a little boy, one person could make enough money to raise a family. Now that's not so. If one person, unless you're knocking down six figures at least, it's hard to have the mother stay home and raise the family and do all the things that need to be done. So I would like to get there, and I think Charlie wanted that, but I think it's maybe particularly his approach to a lot of certain religious tenets that probably pissed off a lot of people. So yeah, I think he's probably there. My conscience is tested. I'm not sure about that. Oh, someone's asking me about. I'm not talking about Candace Owens. That might be a subject for another. Uh, but I will say I feel bad for Miss Candace. I liked her 5 years ago. I like Candace 5 years ago. Candace today is a little bit nutty. So you can clip this and send it to her. I feel bad for Candace. I think she's wrestling with a lot of stuff. I think she's an outsider now in a lot of the groups that she used to be an insider. And I think that's bothersome for her. And you can tell in some of her content. She crawls down these rabbit holes. And I just don't know. You can crawl down a lot of these rabbit holes and get lost. So, yeah, I feel bad for Candace. I think there's a lot of people that are distancing themselves from Candace. And I think she feels that. She has to feel a little pain in it because, when you're a part of a group and you all of a sudden wake up and that group doesn't want you part of their group, it hurts. When I played basketball as a young kid, I hated getting picked last. Hated it. But after I learned how to play, I never got picked last. Now, did I get picked first? No. But I seldom got picked last when I played. But it cause it hurts. It don't feel good knowing nobody wants you. And I suspect she probably has the same feeling I had when I got picked last when I played sports. I feel bad for Candace. So, who knows what she's thinking. Guys, tap, share, and follow. Follow, follow, follow. Tap, share, and follow. Guys, if you really have an opinion, I would like you to call me 559-335-3331. As I tell everybody on my TikTok channel today, come on over to my YouTube channel and let's talk, guys. Let's talk, let's talk, let's talk. Yeah. s- So so someone said, and that's a good point. Someone commented that dude worked 150 hours 50 hours a week. I think he said 150. He might have said 150 hours a week. If you worked 150 hours a week, you were busting some balls. I'm going to tell you that. Props to you, man. I'm going to give you a golf clap. But so, in essence, you sacrificed. You sacrificed so that your wife could stay home and raise the kids. And much respect for you for doing that. And you can still do it, guys. Balancing those kind of things, if that's important to you, then you have to try to find a way to do it. And you found a way to do it. It's increasingly difficult for one person to earn enough money to support an entire household, but it can be done. Much props to you, man. Much props to you. Good job, guys. Thank you for the comment. Guys, let's call and talk. You can call and talk. 559-335-3331. My mother stayed at home, but back in the day, you could buy a sack of groceries, you know, for $10, but we didn't need much when I was little. We were very poor, didn't have many clothes, had one car. So we lived very, very meager. We got our heat fuel from the mountainside. We cut trees for our fuel. We often lived on truly beans and potatoes, cornbread. We had that several times a week. I didn't like it. I would not want to go back there. But sacrifice, you've got to make these sacrifices. Um, it's like when you got a child, if it's important to you that your kids get a good education, then you're going to sacrifice in order to send them to a private school if that's available to you. Me and my wife raised our kids in Catholic school. They all got a Catholic school education up to the 6th grade. We busted our ass. We ain't rich. We damn sure wasn't rich back then. I was making about $20,000 a year. My wife was a stay-at-home mother. But what we did was We went to the school. We went to the church. We worked. We They had scholarship programs where if you worked a certain amount of hours, then they would give you a tuition waiver. We busted our ass. We cleaned the schools, we cleaned classrooms, we cleaned bathrooms, we cut the yard, we cut the grass, we volunteered at most every event. And the trade off was our kids got an education. And also, my mother and father in law chipped in, God rest their soul. So we sacrificed because the education of our children was a big deal. So I get you on that sacrifice thing. Most people don't want to sacrifice. They'll say they want to sacrifice, but as soon as it starts hurting just a little bit, they back up. Oh shit, I didn't know it was going to be this tough. That sacrifice thing is a pain in the ass. I'm telling you, it is a pain in the ass. It's tough to sacrifice. Sacrifice. Guys, tap, share. Oh, I'm saying tap, share, and follow, just like we're on TikTok. Guys, we're on YouTube, my YouTube channel. I'm still getting used to the YouTube. Guys, thank you very much. This is my solo. It works a lot better, guys, if you call me. Call. And someone said Candace means well. Yeah, she probably does. I just feel bad for her. I feel bad for anyone because, again, I can't get inside her head, but it seems like to me she's not feeling well. Stay at home parent is the hardest thing to do. It is. We homeschooled one of our kids because the situation he was at school wasn't right. We didn't like it. We didn't feel good about it. So my wife made a decision to homeschool. In fact, if you go back and you look at some of my YouTube videos, I had a gentleman that is a homeschool advocate, has a great TikTok and a YouTube channel. Take a look at him. It's very, very good, very insightful, very knowledgeable. And I talked to him at length about homeschooling. We liked it, but homeschooling is tough. And I think when I was a prosecutor in West Virginia, I seen a lot of parents that homeschooled their kids, and it was horrible. It was horrible. Most of these parents that homeschooled their kids couldn't spell cat if it was looking right at them. And I felt bad for those kids whose parents decided to homeschool. And most of the time, they decide to homeschool to avoid the actual school environment, not because it was bad on the kid, but because they didn't want to have to drag their ass up at 6 o'clock in the morning and get their kid ready to school. That was most of the homeschooling parents that I encountered. Now, were they all like that? No, but a lot of them were. Sacrifice, guys. Sacrifice is what we're missing a lot of times. So good comment, guys. Good comment. Love it, love it, love it. Guys, tap. I'm not going to say that again. I'm back into it. Guys, you can call if you've got a real strong comment. This only works if you call 559-335-3331. 559. Oh, yeah. During C19, yeah, we were a lot of parents, and this was a huge fallacy with what went on during C19 was that our educational system suffered. And we know this now by looking at our test scores. If you look at the test scores for the past 5 years or so, they have really taken a nosedive because too many people was trying to educate their kids and they didn't have any damn business trying to educate their kids. And our government sold us the fact that distance learning was as good as in-person learning. And that was a big old bull baloney. There is no way distance learning can even come close to face to face. It was just a horrible experience. And I pray that we don't ever do that again. So, guys, let's talk about our freedom of religion. That's what we're on, freedom of religion. Charlie Kirk. And what do you think? What do you think about the funeral? What do you think about Mr. Trump? I personally, I don't care if you're a Trump fan or not. I was uncomfortable with his remarks. I didn't like it. It was a political speech. It didn't have any purpose, I think, at that funeral, but he couldn't help himself. That's why you elected him. He can't help himself. That's one of the things I like about him. He cannot help himself. So I think it was inappropriate. It made me uncomfortable. In contrast, I like what Mr. Vance had to say. I thought it was his remarks were well taken. I liked it. And there was a lot of speakers there it was a revival. I mean, if you watch Fox News, they called it a revival, and that's okay. But I'm not sure I want our political leaders at the top level attending a revival on TV, because it does look like they're at least endorsing a particular religion. Now, if they want to do that on their own time, have at it. They all go to church, or they profess to be. Joe Biden professed to be a Catholic. All of our leaders, our big political leaders, it's one of the first things you'll know about them is if they go to church or not, because they'll damn sure tell you. Because they think middle America want a leader that goes to church. I want someone that goes to church. I'm not ready for an atheist in the White House. I'm just not. I just don't think that's the path we want to go as a nation. I think there's a lot of value in religion. There's a lot of core tenets that I like about religion. I like the thought that religions mostly will tell you to work hard, be honest, have kids, raise your kids, teach them to be responsible people. I like that about religion. So I don't think it's altogether bad. I just think it's a little bit unsettling when you see um, all of our top leaders, involved to that level. That's just my thought. Guys, if you have a different viewpoint, I'd love to have you on my show. All you got to do is call 559-335-3331. I will download this to my podcast, guys, which see if you can get it. Doesn't cost you a nary penny. So I'm just talking like I normally talk, guys. Where's my empathy? I don't know what you mean. Where's my empathy? I have plenty of empathy. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Willis. Well, it was a funeral. I'm not, and if you watched, so don't be coming at me about me downgrading the funeral. I'm not denigrating the funeral. What I am saying is that when our national leaders get on such a public stage and make a pronouncement the way that they did, I just think that's a little bit concerning. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying it makes me concerned the way that I'm concerned now as an adult when I look back at all them missionaries going around to all the little schools in Appalachia and preaching the Bible verses through a storyboard. As an adult, that concerns me. As an adult, I'm concerned when someone comes into a schoolhouse and all of the kids are allowed to attend a religious service. That concerns me. So it's the same thing. It concerns me. Is it wrong? By all appearances, it ain't wrong. But if you look at our Constitution, our government shall not establish a religion, and they shall not prohibit you from the free exercise of religion. So, was that funeral? The question is, how close was that funeral to establishing a national religion? That's a conversation I think worth having. And if your response to that is to bristle and call me whatever the hell you want to call me, that's not advancing the ball. That's not a discussion. That's name calling. You can call me whatever you want, but that's the discussion I'm just trying to have here. Oh, here we go. We're parsing words. Someone said it was a memorial and not a funeral. I'm sorry. It looked like a funeral to me. You call it a memorial. I don't know. There's a damn bit of difference in a memorial and a funeral. It's just like on here, everybody's always asking me, do you know the difference between a lawyer and an attorney? Yeah, there's a subtle difference, but I don't recognize it. To me, when I go out and someone asks me if I'm an attorney, I say, yeah. If I go a little further down the street and somebody asks me if I'm a lawyer, I say, yeah. I don't recognize the difference, although there is. And there might be a difference between a memorial and a funeral. I'd have to get out Webster's to take a look. Right now, I'm by myself. If my daughter Elizabeth was here, I'd get her to take a look. But to me, it was the same. And I don't think people looking thought it was any difference. They call it a memorial, but it looked like a funeral to me. There was preaching, there was singing. The only thing that I didn't see was funeral sandwiches. But I'm sure at that stadium they had funeral sandwiches that you could purchase. Although I'm absolutely sure, I bet $1,000 that though their funeral sandwiches weren't anywhere close to the funeral sandwiches you're going to get in Eastern Kentucky. We call it funeral salad. It's made with bologna. It's very good. Anybody that knows how to make a good funeral salad got my vote. So the only difference between that memorial was the funeral salad. I don't know if they had funeral salad. Now, this is what I'll compromise with you. If they had funeral salad, funeral sandwiches, if they had some funeral spread, then I think it was a funeral. But if at that stadium they didn't have any funeral spread, any funeral salad, it probably wasn't a funeral. It was probably more in line with a memorial. But I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know anybody that went there. So I think that might be the only difference is the funeral spread. All right, guys, tap, share, follow if you're on TikTok. Guys, call. If I don't have any calls, I've said about all I can say. I don't have any opposing viewpoint. A lot of TikTok chatter, nothing on my YouTube. I hope you're looking in on me or on Facebook. If you're looking in on me on Facebook, guys, give me a holler and send me a comment. No comments coming through. At least they're not coming through my ears. Go ahead. I'm rich. All right, guys, listen. I've went on enough. I just wanted to give a little conversation going, get some things started, just give you something to think about. The name of my channel is Real Life and Law. Talk about your life and the law. So I thank you all for stopping in. I'm going to quit yammering on. And guys, I'll see you on Thursday. Myself and Elizabeth will be in here. So, guys, if life and law collide in your world and you don't know where to go, you ain't got nobody to talk to because everybody you know is tired of hearing your problem, you know what you do? Give me a holler. Just give me a holler, plain and simple. All right, guys, till Thursday at 11 o'clock. I'll see you later.